Daisy and the Dazzling City. Daisy the country mouse loved her cozy home in the roots of a giant oak tree. Her days were filled with sunshine, sweet red berries, and the gentle rustle of leaves. Life was quiet, simple, and she was perfectly happy. One afternoon, her cousin Percy came to visit from the city. He wore a smart little vest and looked around at the quiet field with a sniff. "Oh, Daisy," he said, looking at her meal of seeds, "this is so rustic." In the city, we feast like kings on cheese and cake. Percy told stories of a dazzling life. He described bright lights that turned night into day and grand dining rooms with mountains of delicious leftovers. That night, Daisy tossed and turned in her soft, mossy bed. She dreamed of the city Percy had described. She pictured herself nibbling on a giant wedge of cheese. "I must go," she whispered to the moon. "I must see this wonderful place for myself." The next morning, Daisy packed a small bag with a few choice acorns. "Percy," she announced, her voice trembling just a little, "I will come with you to the city." Percy puffed out his chest. "Excellent choice, cousin. You won't regret it." Their journey began across the familiar sunny meadow, but soon the familiar sights gave way to new ones. "The city is just beyond that noisy river," Percy said, pointing a paw towards a distant, shimmering line of water. The noisy river was a wide, rushing stream. "How will we cross?" Daisy squeaked, looking at the fast-moving water. "Simple," said Percy. "We'll ride a leaf." He found a large, sturdy oak leaf and pushed it into the water. They scrambled aboard their leafy boat. The stream was faster than it looked. It spun them around and around. Daisy held on tight, her whiskers wet with spray, while Percy tried his best to steer with a small twig. After the river, they came to a wide, black path that rumbled and roared. Giant, wheeled monsters sped by. "The Great Road," Percy announced. "We must be very quick and very careful here." Finally, they reached the city. It was a whirlwind of loud noises, strange smells, and rushing feet. "Hurry along, cousin," Percy called, expertly dodging a giant boot. "There is so much to see before the grand feast." Percy led Daisy to a window with warm, golden light pouring out. The air smelled of sugar and baking bread. "The bakery," he whispered. "Sometimes sweet things fall from the sky here." They watched as a baker dusted flour everywhere. Next, they scurried past a shop filled with wonders. There were dolls with glassy eyes, brightly colored balls, and a train that chugged on a tiny track. Daisy had never seen anything so strange and colorful. "Even the city has fields," Percy said, leading her into a park. But it wasn't like her meadow. The grass was short and tidy, and strange metal structures stood everywhere. Pigeons much bigger than them waddled about, cooing loudly. "Enough sightseeing," Percy declared. "It is time for the main event. The grand feast awaits." He led her down a dark alley and through a tiny crack in the wall of an enormous house. Inside, it was quiet and vast. The floor was so polished, Daisy could see her own worried face in it. They crept along the wall, their tiny footsteps making no sound on the thick rug. They scurried up to the dining room table, their noses twitching. But the grand feast was just a few tiny crumbs on a very large, very empty plate. "The humans ate everything," Percy whispered, looking much less confident. Daisy's sharp eyes spotted something Percy had missed. Tucked beside the plate was a single, forgotten pea. "Look, Percy," she whispered. They nibbled on it together. It was tasty, but it wasn't the feast she had imagined. Suddenly, a large shadow fell over the table. A low, rumbling sound, like a tiny earthquake, vibrated through the wood. Percy froze, his ears flat against his head. "What was that?" Daisy whispered. Two huge, gleaming eyes appeared in the darkness, followed by a low growl. A giant, furry creature with very sharp claws leaped onto the table. "The cat!" shrieked Percy, his fur standing on end. They ran for their lives. The cat pounced, its claws swiping the air right where they had been a second before. Daisy's heart beat like a drum. This wasn't exciting, it was terrifying. "This way," Percy squeaked, diving for cover behind the leg of a giant chair. The cat's massive face peered around the side, its whiskers twitching. They held their breath, hoping the monster couldn't see them. When the cat looked away for a second, they made a dash for it. They scrambled across the floor and back to the tiny crack in the wall, tumbling out into the cold night air of the alley. They were safe, but shaking with fear. Hiding in the alley, Daisy finally caught her breath. "Percy," she panted, "your city life is too much for me. I miss my quiet field and my safe little burrow." The next morning, she hugged her cousin goodbye. "Be safe, Daisy," he said, looking a little sad. The long journey home felt different. The great road was still scary, but Daisy was quicker now. The river seemed less wild, and she steered their leaf boat with a new confidence. She couldn't wait to be home. When Daisy arrived back at the old oak tree, the sun felt warmer and the berries looked sweeter than ever before. She took a deep breath of clean, fresh air. She realized that a simple life, filled with peace and safety, was the most dazzling life of all.